again, supply chain poisoning, as you might be aware, is essentially trying to get into the chain at certain point and infecting it so that you move downstream and even upstream if possible and keep the whole chain infected, right? So hackers are getting in at different points. They have figured out everything, including sectors like aviation, where we would assume that the levels of security and sort of scrutiny and diligence are high. They're entering even these supply chains connected with aviation, mobile phones, space technologies, again, which have been compromised of late, communication, remote communication. Again, we've seen in Eastern Europe how a certain operator was affected by one of these supply chain poisoning instances. Actually, critical projects could be compromised at will. Again, in Eastern Europe, we've seen when communication was needed, communication infrastructure was needed, it actually failed at that point in time. Core system and infrastructure can be rendered inoperable or inaccessible during times of crisis to degrade the quality of response. Exactly what we've seen again in Eastern Europe, in a certain country, to be more specific, that the entire access denial sort of operation was carried out in such a smooth way that despite the fact that multiple operators were involved, the critical operator who was handling a big chunk of these communications was sort of rendered out of the picture, and they were not able to sort of chip in. And it took some time to put things back in operation. Laterally moving malware, again, they inject the malware which goes upstream, downstream, vertically, horizontally, etc., etc. Essentially, the target, of course, is to ensure that it is present across the supply chain, and through the supply chains they can even hop over and infect parallel chains which may be running for similar sort of vendors or similar kind of relationships, going all the way towards the end at it might end at a government or a critical manufacturing or or even a critical infrastructure component, so to say, right? So a lot of times we've seen devices such as CCTV cameras which have been procured in bulk from certain geographies. They came in and they were pre-infected, so to say, or they had backdoors, or they had other challenges, so to say. So it is essential that these devices are sanitized, they're tested in sandbox environments to see if there is any CNC interactions that are opened up, or at least they should be sanitized before they are added on to the network or any other way. Similar sort of steps hold true also for other operations, or rather multi-staged operations connected with supply chains. And because of this diversification of vendors that we're seeing these days, where supply chains run across geographies, across vendors, across time zones and what have you, it is very difficult to actually standardize the security measures, which has become a challenge that has presented of late. So you can see drones, POS devices, remote field surveillance equipment. These are the sort of malware ingress points for supply chains. So these are way upstream, and they sort of get infected, and then the malware or the infection moves across the chain.